Welcome to Markets Today. It's a new month, the 1st of October, the year 2020. A happy new month from myself, Mbithe Mwema, the team here at Markets Today, and the wider team at Metropole TV. It's also the start of the last quarter for the year 2020. What have you been doing with your investments? You still have a bit of a window to at least make a difference. If nothing else, learn something new, do something new, act differently as you plan ahead for the year 2021. It's a new month. Let's take a look at what happened on the last trading day of September on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. It was a bit of a jump in terms of the revenues that we saw go through. I will take you through the key matrices that came out, what were the performance on the index, and what was happening on turnover, as well as who are the top gainers and the losers. Once we are done with the segment on the NSC, we will look at inflation. The numbers came out yesterday, and take a look at what was happening there. Then when we take a break, we come back and we try and put everything together and ask ourselves, what is happening at a macro level? What is happening to investment trends? What should we look out for and our focus to be in the last quarter of the year? I will introduce our guest for that segment later on in the show. And as always, I usually invite you, ask Mbithe, what would you like to ask me on investments? It's a new quarter, it's a new month. What do you want to know? At least 1, 2, 3 things that you would like to know. Please send that through our line 20146, and I guarantee you I will make the space and the time to be able to answer you on a one-on-one basis tomorrow in the afternoon. Now let's take a look at what was happening on the NSC. The indices, the NSC All Share was slightly down yesterday. We did see Safaricom trade a bit lower at the 29.7 shilling mark. Safaricom is the dominant market player. Any slight movement on the price tends to affect the NSC All Share as well as the NSC 20. The NSC 20 was slightly up 7.3 percentage points to close the day at 1,852.29 points. NSC 25 share was also up 6.53 percentage points to close the day at 3,258. Let's take a look at turnover. There was a huge jump in turnover yesterday. 650 million is the amount of trades that happened over the day yesterday, and this was largely driven by Safaricom. A barometer of trying to understand what is happening on the equity exchange is trying to get a sense of what are the foreigners doing. Yesterday, there were net sellers out of the blue chip companies. They accounted for 91% of the sales on the NSC versus 85% of the purchases on the NSC. It's the second week that we are seeing the foreigners turn net sellers, which then begins to tell us that we expect a bit of a softening or a weakening, if you like, on the prices, more so on the blue chip companies. Let's take a look at who the top movers were by virtue of volume. Okay, so we have the 12-month inflation rate that has come up. Okay, I will touch on this briefly, but let me just finish up on who the top gainers for the day were, as well as the top movers. As we had mentioned, Safaricom, 16 million shares traded, 29.75 was the price point that we saw. The foreign investors were largely net sellers out of the blue chips. That's Safaricom, a bit of equity as well. And they accounted for 91% of the sales yesterday versus 85% of the purchases. Safaricom and the other blue chips such as KCB and Equity Bank tend to be a barometer in terms of understanding the investor sentiment on the NSC. That was a huge trade that went through yesterday. Today seems to be like a bit of a muted day. And of course, this trade went through as one of the fund managers or the investors were closing the quarter so that they can end up reporting for that quarter. In other words, as you get to the tail end of the quarter, end of September, you typically see a bit of movement, but then when you start the new month, October, it tends to be a bit slow. You could get a new opportunity to buy some stock, especially if you are looking to hold it for the long term. Bank of Kigali Group, 3.1 million shares traded. The price has been coming off and is trading at about 13.1 shillings per share. Bank of Kigali has been seeing a lot of foreign interest in this particular year, and we have seen foreigners buy and sell out of this particular stock. Bank of Kigali is domiciled in Rwanda. Its head office is in Kigali, Rwanda, but it did do a listing in Nairobi when it was raising money at the point of introducing its shares to the NSC. Kengen continues to be top in terms of the volumes that we are seeing on the NSE. 1.57 million shares is what traded. In the last couple of days, we have been seeing more volume go through Kenya Power. So now we've seen a switch and there's more interest on the Kengen company as a stock. When you look at the equities, Kengen KPLC, we do see that investors tend to favor Kengen, largely because of its structure, the fact that it has been moving from hydro to renewable energy, and the current price point between 5 to 5.5 has been offering value. And finally, the last positive that has been there recently for Kengen is the fact that the Auditor General signed off on their accounts and they were able to pay 25 cents per share in terms of dividend. That has been attractive and it certainly pits it and gives it a better positioning compared to its counterpart in the utilities, which is Kenya Power. Equity Group traded 1.1 million shares over the day. Kenya Re, we saw a bit of uptick there, 657,000 shares traded at the level of 2.3 shillings per share. Not too much movement. It hit a low of 2.1 earlier in the month. It's now at 2.3 and we haven't seen too much price trajectory there. Who are the top gainers for the day? Top gainers, Jubilee. We talked to you through about Jubilee yesterday. It did sell a part of its general business to an existing company and it was able to raise 10 billion shillings from that sale. This material announcement that came out on Tuesday evening saw the stock trade up 10 percentage points to 242 shillings per share on the back of this news. Of the listed insurance companies, Jubilee is the only one that was able to report positive earnings growth, and at half year it was up 3 percentage points and also declared a dividend for this period. So they have a strong track record there. They have sold off part of the general insurance business by the existing shareholders to a local company, and that's Alliance, which has a local operation here. And when you are looking at the insurance sector, it does look like for you to actually get penetration, you probably want to go the brownfield as opposed to greenfield. Brownfield meaning you want to buy an existing business if possible, as opposed to starting from scratch, because as we have learned, getting into the insurance business is not as easy as eating pie. TPS Eastern, that's TPS Serena, was up 9 percentage points as well. Stanbic Holdings, a bit of traction there, up 7.59 percentage points to 81.5 shillings per share. NSE, Nairobi Securities Exchange, which provides the trading platform, was up 3 percentage points to 8.64 shillings per share, and also Flame Tree. Who were the top losers for the day? The top losers for the day were led by Bank of Kigali Group, which was down 6.9 percentage points to 12.15 shillings per share. This saw a bit of a trade yesterday, a huge trade actually from the foreigners, and it has been seeing a bit of weakness in terms of its price point. Olympia Capital down 6 percentage points. WPP Scan Group, some more weakness coming through this particular stock. It's now down 4.8 percentage points to close at 6.66. We did see a bit of an opportunity for speculative activity earlier in the month when it came down to this level of about 6.3 shillings per share, 6.5 shillings per share. We saw some retail investors pick into the stock and began to exit at the 8.4 shilling per share. So if it's something that you are looking out for, if any material information comes through, there could be another speculative opportunity, but at this point it seems to be far-fetched. Uchumi down 3.2 percentage points to 0.3. And Absa New Gold down 2.73 percentage points to 19.6. We have seen a bit of volatility on the gold market globally, and this has a direct reflection on what happens locally. Earlier in the month, a week or so ago, we actually saw it go above the 2,000 mark, but yesterday it came down and it was able to print 1960. Talking about gold, we will be able to discuss that tomorrow just to understand, is it a safe haven and how do you invest in it in Kenya? But those are the price points for the day. Let's look at what was happening on inflation. Inflation numbers came out for the month of September, and inflation was lower at 4.2 percentage points compared to 4.36 percentage points. Inflation for September, 4.2, for August was 4.36. What was driving this? What happened for this particular month? We saw lower price points, especially for some of the key parameters such as food, which tends to make up 36% of the inflation basket. For this particular month of August, I think let's move to the next slide because the chart is showing us August, that was 4.36, September slightly lower at 4.2 percentage points. And we did see a slight uptick in terms of some of the price points, especially for alcoholic beverages. There was a slightly higher price point. 4.2%. The sentiment we are getting from investors as well as from the central bank is that inflation is well anchored, no surprises expected. The key risk factor for inflation in the year 2020 was largely anchored on the inflation of locust, but Mother Nature had her way and she was able to change this invasion. Outside of that, there are no other key points for inflation, but certainly towards the end of the year, we will begin to feel the impact of oil prices, especially at the pump. Remember, earlier in the year, oil futures did go to as low as minus 37%. There was a short-term benefit to the country and for anybody who was buying oil, whether locally or globally. But now the same price of oil has actually ticked back up and gone to $40 per barrel. Certainly, this will be felt over time as we go through the rest of the year. So there will be a slight uptick on the price of goods and services, largely because of the impact of oil, which tends to have a supply side impact by increasing the cost of transporting goods from point A to point B. For now, 4.2% and well anchored at least for the remainder of the year. We take a break. When we come back, I will introduce our guest who's with us in studio. He is an economist, Reginald, who will be talking to us about the macro numbers and what to think about as we get into the next quarter. Remember our line, 20146. Alternatively, I invite you, speak to me, that's Mbithe Mwema, on social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, or Metropole TV on the same platforms. The quarter is beginning. Happy new month, yes. But what will be your happy new investing tip? What do you want to know? Please reach out and I'll be able to answer your questions tomorrow, which is Friday, on our Ask Mbithe segment, where I just break it down, talk to you and help you understand how to move from point A to point B when it comes to investing. We take a short break. I hope to hear from you and engage with you. See you in a few.